Hey there, Nicole.
Hey.
What did you learn this week?
I learned from the late and great Michael K. Williams that a man has to have a code. Per Omar on The Wire. God rest his soul. And what did you want to connect on this week?
I want to talk about vulnerability a bit, even though I think that was your topic. I would definitely want to spend some time on the show talking about it today.
All right.
Very cool. So join us on another episode of the Hallspace Podcast.
See you soon.
Welcome to the Hallspace Podcast. It's about connections. I'm your host, Dr. Ritch Hall, and this is a weekly conversation about whatever and however I see to connect things. For people who want to connect, chat, and learn a thing or two about a thing or two. Without further ado, let's start the show. Hey there. Wait.
Can you hear me?
They should be able to hear you, yes.
Okay. All right.
Hey there.
Hi.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's going pretty well. How are you?
Good. We're back for the second live episode.
Yes. Yes, and we should be better at this, but we're still stumbling quite a bit.
These live episodes are tougher than they look.
Yes.
Clearly.
A little bit. And even though I've done this for 3 times now, I've realized now that I'm editing the live episodes that we don't do the introductions. So, real quick, who are we?
Who are you?
I'm Dr. Ritch Hall, and you are my lovely and capable wife,
Nicole Hall. Hey there.
Hey.
Yeah. We realize we have to do that on the podcast because
people can't see us.
Right?
Yes.
But the video is like,
you could see us.
You know me.
Yeah. Well, we can't assume that they know who we are.
We cannot.
Yeah.
That's actually a good thing if you don't know and you're tuning in for the first time, and maybe you'll come back again.
You're supposed to tell people who you are.
Yeah, that's part of it.
So this is the Hallspace Podcast. I'm Ritch Hall, and this is my wife, and we do this show. We try to do it every Sunday, but we keep having like the roadblocks that are life that have caused us to slow it down a little bit, but we still get something done, and we try to get something out to you people.
We do.
Every week.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining us. We're so glad to have you if you decide to stay and watch us do this thing.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about some stuff this week.
We are.
We'll be here for an hour. An hour of your time.
Yep.
Please give us an hour of your time, and we will do our best to make
It'll be fun and interesting and hopefully thought-provoking.
Yes.
So we're going to jump right in. Richie's got the docket of items that we're going to discuss today.
I have the docket?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Whoops.
Did not know I was... I have the docket.
Guys, we talked about this before.
We did. We talked about it literally just moments ago. And then I got distracted.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to go back to the docket as you described it.
Right. And so there are a couple of things that we wanted to discuss. Top of the show, I kind of wanted to send out condolences and prayers to the family of Michael K. Williams. Mm-hmm. Michael K. Williams was an actor that was best known for the role of Omar on The Wire.
Yes.
And we are huge Wire fans.
Yes.
And he also did a couple of other roles and a couple of other shows that I heard were really good that I've yet to see. So I can only speak to his role in The Wire. But he passed away this past week, and we are praying for his family. And it seems like a lot of the people that were actors with him also were very sad about his passing, and that there's so many people that have had such a great relationship with him and have so many great things to say about him. So prayers up for his family and his nephew who found him and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so Omar, like on The Wire, like he was big time.
Yes.
You know, we were introduced to The Wire by Tyler Shaw. He's Dr. Shaw now.
Well, it wasn't just Tyler Shaw. Your brother was like,
my brother was on top of it
to
too.
The Wire.
My brother watched The Corner first. And so if these are things that you're not familiar with, you're going to want to look at them.
So way back in the early 2000s,
Mm-hmm.
HBO had a couple of shows. One was called The Corner that was largely about people being on the drugs.
Right.
And then The Wire was, in some ways, a spiritual spinoff of The Corner, where they tackled the Byzantine metropolis as it tried to handle the drug problem.
So, right. So, in other words, The Wire was this sort of full circle representation of the drugs, the drug dealers, the detectives, the families affected by those who are, you know, drug dealers or drug users, the newscasters who report about the drugs. Like it's a sort of world. It's sort of a worldview of everything. And
kind of
each
Dickensian.
Season,
so it's
exactly.
It's like showing all the layers
Yep.
that affect
Right.
why the drugs are a problem,
Right.
the problem that they are, how it's a very
Right.
lucrative problem,
Yeah.
and how people fail to solve the problem in
Yep.
part because of how complex
Right.
the problem is.
Right.
And so it does a very good job. An excellent show if you want to learn.
Excellent show. If you haven't seen it yet,
Why problems aren't so easy to
missing out.
solve.
No.
Yeah.
But yeah, so each season sort of tackles a different aspect of it. And Omar was a part of the first 3 seasons
Yes.
of it, and he did an excellent job of that role.
Michael K. Williams was
Michael
the part
K.
of the first season
Williams
as Omar, the character Omar.
Yes, I'm sorry. Michael K. Williams was the actor Omar. Yeah.
Yeah. The actor who played Omar.
The actor
Omar
who
Little,
played, yeah.
who was a stick-up kid who robbed drug
He
dealers.
robbed drug dealers. And
very charismatic character.
super funny and serious. You know, he's got this code. He's like robbing drug dealers, but he's never putting his gun on guys that are not in the game, kind of thing. So if you haven't seen it, definitely watch it. If you've watched it, rewatch it. I feel like I've been rewatching it multiple times. When he passed last week, I made it through season 1 and season 2 because we have HBO Max, and it's still a good show. It started out in 2002.
It definitely holds up. It started in 2002. June of 2002 was when it first came out. And
That's when I
next year it'll
graduated
be 20 years
college.
old. Yeah, next year it'll be 20 years old. We didn't get into it until at least, I think, the third or
season.
fourth season. No,
Yes.
third season. Is third season the kids or is third season Hamsterdam?
Third season are the kids.
Okay, so we started with the kids.
Yep, we started out with the kids.
There's a kids
and
season that will break
Tyler
your heart.
was like, "You guys have to watch this show," and we're like,
Yeah, and so I feel like we had
okay.
viewings where like we watched a couple
We
of those
watched a
episodes
couple
all
of
together. We
them.
were doing family night while I was in
Yeah.
graduate school.
Yep.
And we would meet up to watch it. And I feel like that was
Yeah.
probably like 2005, 2006. So we
was.
were behind
and
on
then
it.
We were behind, and then we got hooked, and it
And
was
we
like,
watched the last
holy
2 seasons
cow,
together.
We've got to
Yeah.
go. First of all, we got to go back and watch season 1 and 2, and then we got to keep up.
Yeah.
We
And
gotta
I will
keep
say
up.
that we did, back before we had children and we had unlimited disposable time, we would find ourselves binge watching the whole seasons
We would legit
all the time.
come home from
work.
work, get dinner, and then we watch 2.5, if not 3 episodes.
Right.
And the
so
episodes
like 3,
are
4 straight hours of TV.
I was going to say
They're an
45
hour
minutes.
long. Yeah,
There are
45
no
minutes to an hour.
commercials, so there's no
And
breaks in
it's
between.
dense
them. 'Cause
TV
it's an
too.
HBO show.
There's so much going on. It's not for everyone.
No, it's very layered. It's very dense. There are so many things that when you watch it multiple times, you catch stuff that you hadn't seen before.
Right.
And I mean, and we're people that we've seen it
5, 6 times at
5,
this point.
6, 7 times. Yeah.
Yeah, somebody was asking when I was talking about it with someone
even
at
tell you
work
how many
last week.
times.
I was like, I've at least watched it all the way through, like maybe 4 or 5 times. Because
At
the very
least.
first time it was coming on, we binge watched like the first 2 or 3 seasons, then watched the season as it was unfolding, and then every time a new season would come out, we would
go back
rewatch
and
the whole
rewatch
thing.
the other season. Yep.
And then finally, after it was all over, at some point, we rewatched it
the
again.
whole thing. Yep.
And now rewatching it again in honor of Michael K. Williams.
Yeah.
phenomenal actor.
Absolutely
he was also
great.
in the show LoveCraft Country.
LoveCraft Country and BoardWalk Empire.
He was amazing in that show.
A lot of people loved him in BoardWalk Empire.
So in many ways, he was a bit of a tour de force. Like they were a lot of people who like were enraptured by him as an actor.
Well, because he was excellent. I remember hearing, I didn't get to physically see it, but I remember hearing his interview on NPR. And he talked about his scar. He talked about getting into acting. He talked about kind of his life. And it was like, he's incredibly fascinating.
Yeah.
And he was a good soul.
Yeah.
And that was something
a lot of people had a really positive.
They did.
Yeah, really positive feelings about him.
He struggled with a lot of things, but he was still a really good brother. So
yeah. And so it's unfortunate. Drugs got him.
Yeah,
is what they're saying. They haven't
said
official
there's no
autopsy,
official,
but right now drugs are taking people out.
Yeah,
and that's unfortunate. I will say for those people who need the help, who need support, get the help you need because there's only one you.
Do it
and
now.
People need you. There are people who love you and care about you. And
That's
I understand that drugs are a difficult thing to overcome. You can find yourself really sort of trapped in a cycle with them, and you should do what you have to do to get the help or support you need. Accept the help and support that you need. Yeah. Because it's not, you can't let this thing take you out. A lot of actors. There were several a comedian a couple weeks ago who was killed via a fentanyl overdose.
Yeah.
There was recently an actor, a young actor, 16-year-old actor who was killed in a fentanyl overdose.
Yeah.
I'm blanking on their specific names, but I will.
God rest their souls. We'll put them in the show notes.
Yeah, but it's very tragic that so many people are being negatively affected by these drugs because. Yeah.
So, I mean, in addition to being negatively affected, there are so many more people because of COVID. We're stuck in the house. Yeah. So there's so many more of us that are depressed, they're anxious and things like that. And I do know that one of the bigger stumbling blocks is finding the right help.
Yes.
Right? Don't give up. Yeah. If the one, psychiatrist or psychologist doesn't call you back, find another one. Find somebody and keep moving. You find someone, you don't like them, find the next person.
Right, which can be hard. I always say
it's
that
hard.
One of the hardest things about the process of getting help is often getting discouraged because you try something and it doesn't work, or you try a place and it doesn't work.
Yeah, and then you fall back into this dark hole.
And that feeling of helplessness will almost always make whatever mental health issue you're dealing with worse.
It could consume
And so I tell a lot of people, just keep trying to reach out. I know it can get tiring and exhausting and you feel as if it's not worth it, but it is almost always worth it to be helped. So
this is an important point, and this is something that I'm speaking to whoever's going through it and to myself as well. I found a number of psychologists that I got a list of, and I was like, I like each one of these, but this one is my favorite. And I sent a message out, which for those of us who have trouble with asking for help, it's hard to do, to press that button and say, yes, this is what I'm dealing with. This is what I'm struggling with. I feel like you might be able to help me with it based on your, biography, your profile, etc. And then you don't hear back. Yeah. And that can hurt. And that hurts. And it's hard. But it's also something that it's like,
you got to persist.
You got to keep moving.
You got to persist.
You got to keep looking, and at the very minimum, find someone that you can talk to. Yeah. Who's willing to listen and go from there. Yeah. And again, like I said, I'm speaking to myself too, because like I lost, my person that I wanted. She is not contacting me back, and that's because she's probably so good that she's busy with other people.
A lot of people are booked right now.
A lot of people are, and I mean, because of the situation in the country now, this is a very a big time for people to seek help, which is good. Which is good. So I don't begrudge any of that. But for those who could get discouraged, it is just something I want to put out there that, keep looking, right? Keep searching.
Keep looking. Don't give up on yourself.
Keep trying. It's worth it. And again, like I said, I'm speaking to myself too, but yeah, that's a big deal. That's a big deal. And eventually you will find your person.
Yeah.
Your counselor, your psychiatrist, your psychologist, whoever.
Whatever you
is.
need.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's out there if you keep looking for it.
But don't shut down.
Which is, a lot of people do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think the thing with Michael K. Williams, there were a lot of people that were like, I didn't even know he was doing drugs.
Yeah.
And
even though he had been in rehab multiple times.
He had been in rehab multiple times.
Yeah.
The actor that plays Lester Freeman was like, I wish he had said something to somebody. Yeah. We would have helped him.
Right. Right. But also, do we understand it's hard to say you need to help?
It is hard to reach out. What do you even say when you feel up enough to reach out? Right.
Yeah.
And the sad thing about that was, his nephew came and found him, and it's like, ugh.
Which is not something you ever want.
That's not what you want. And I'm sure that's not what he wanted.
Right.
I'm sure that's not what he wanted.
Right.
You don't know when the last time is going to be last time.
Nobody knows.
So yeah. So God bless his soul and his family. We do understand that addiction is hard. We understand that addiction is even harder now. Depression and anxiety is harder now because of COVID and being stuck in the house.
Yeah, having limited options. I mean, some people are not stuck in the house. Some people are out right now. Like the COVID, I don't know if you heard, but COVID might be over. There are people out and about. I went to the store, several stores today. People were not wearing masks indoors.
I don't.
And a lot of people are just acting as if nothing is wrong. So maybe there's nothing wrong. Maybe we're the people who are acting like there's something wrong, and there is nothing wrong out there.
In my Candy Burris impersonation, the lies. The lies.
Yeah.
It's wear your masks.
Please.
Okay? Everybody should wear their masks. I don't care if you're vaccinated or you're not vaccinated. Wear your masks, okay? Because at the very minimum, you're not going to spread whatever you have.
Yes.
And it doesn't, COVID is the big thing, but like bronchitis, strep, flu.
The common cold, still out there.
When y'all breathe on me, like my immune system goes into complete shutdown.
Yeah, Nicole's probably going to be wearing masks for the rest of her life.
I'm going to be wearing masks for the rest of my life because I'm like, oh, this is what I need to do? Boom, got it.
We didn't get sick for 2 years. Our daughter was in school for 2 weeks and she brought a cold home.
She did.
We've now all gotten a cold.
Took us all out.
Yeah.
And it was so scary because we're like, we don't know if this is a cold or if this is like COVID.
Is this COVID onset? What is this?
So you're taking your kids
Everybody's
now.
Been tested.
Everybody's going to the doctor now, and it's like, we don't know if this is a cold or if this is COVID, so test them for everything. Right?
And they've been tested.
Everybody's negative.
But still, it's scary when you're trying to figure out.
When you don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And thankfully, they have created these rapid tests. So that, we can take the kids in and, within the hour, essentially, if they have it or not, because you can't go anywhere in the world with a good conscience. Yeah. You say it like that. Knowing that maybe they've been exposed and maybe they're exposing others. Right. And so we have, they go to school, we have dance class, we've got birthday parties, we've got all these things. That we go to, and a lot of times we are masked up for that, but even with that, we want to be as careful as
no matter what, there's risks is the problem.
100%. So yeah, it's
you never quite know what's going to be the issue.
You have no idea. Yeah, and honestly, like I said, for myself, I get super sick off of all the things, so the masking helps all of us.
Right.
And if you have kids, you know how germy they are.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Kids spread all the germs.
Oh, my gosh. They sneeze on your eyeballs. They lick their fingers and put them in their nose, and then they touch you. Like, all that stuff's going on all the time.
All the time.
And so I'm not saying masks forever, but I'm saying masks help me during bronchitis season. Flu season.
Right.
And
so
right
wear your
now,
masks.
the COVID scare. So. Yeah.
So wear your masks. Get vaccinated if you so choose. I do think it's good for you. A lot of people are still scared of the vaccine, even though millions of people have taken it now.
We get vaccinated for
with
so
no
many
side
other
effects,
things,
and we've gotten vaccinated for so many other things.
We get vaccinated all the
society
time.
just takes a while to catch up with some of these things.
Yes. And that's okay to do your research and try to figure out where you fall on that. But please think of other people.
Think of other people who can't take the vaccine.
Yeah. And honestly, we have right now a battle in our school district where there are some parents who are upset that these schools are mandating masks. And
everything's become a battleground. It's very interesting right now.
It is. Now, when I tell you that we get requirements all the time about the kids being vaccinated, especially under a certain age, they're like, if you don't give us the records, they can't come back to school, period. Right? And so now they're just like, we're not requiring you to be vaccinated because the kids can't be at this point yet. But they are requiring at the very minimum that you wear masks. And so there are a bunch of upset parents that in our district specifically that are upset that there is a mask mandate.
I still think I don't know. It's hard to know, particularly with the internet, how many of the vocal people are also the people who, you know what I mean? Like, we don't know how many of the vocal people are everybody. Yeah. You could feel like it's everybody because there's a lot of vocal people.
Well, yeah, I think there is, specifically for our district, because I've run this down today because it's annoying. There are a couple of squeaky wheels because we have our district and then we have a Facebook page for just the area, not the school district, but just the area. And they posted and they're like, we're going to go to the school board and we're going to complain that these kids shouldn't have to wear masks, right?
Yeah.
And there were, thankfully, a lot of parents in the comments that were like, is this what we're fighting about?
Right. There's so much other things to fight about.
There's so many other things to fight about. As I've said
before, I'm more frustrated with the idea that people went to schools to fight about masks and to fight about critical race theory after a year of being home with our kids and recognizing that they definitely need more resources in schools. We didn't fight for more resources. We didn't go to our government and say, hey, we need more funding for teachers. We went to them and said, well, I'm mad at the school system for this and that, which is so dumb.
They're
but
already
also,
being
it's
asked.
happened before. So
number one, it's happened before. Yeah. Number two, we're already asking teachers to do double, triple,
we're asking so much of our teachers.
The duty, right? The very least you could do, it's just wear the mask so that you don't expose others to whatever you got.
Right.
Whatever you got.
Right.
COVID or not.
Right.
Right.
COVID or not.
COVID or no.
Yeah.
Just wear the mask.
Right.
And if you need to wear a specific kind of mask for the extra breathing, because a lot of the complaints are that, they can't breathe in these masks.
Nice. Some of the complaints are silly, but
they are silly.
Yeah.
But I mean, these parents feel it wholeheartly, right?
Oh yeah. A lot of people.
And they feel like they're advocating for their children. I don't begrudge that, but it's stupid.
Yeah, you can make people go to very far lengths for the children. Think of the children. Will someone think of the children?
Think of the children.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah, I mean, I think my biggest issue is like they took back the mask mandate. They added it back. Now they're fighting against this mask mandate, and there are no other options.
Yeah.
Our kids have to go to school. There is no remote online learning. Otherwise, I would eat my shoes and they would be here like they were last year.
Right. And we don't want to go back to that.
And let me be very clear. I love my children.
You can love your children and then also want them to go to a secondary location to be educated.
I don't want to teach them.
That's how we've been doing it for the last half century at least.
I don't want to teach them and not do my job.
It's not your calling. It's not your calling.
It's not my calling.
Are those who are called for certain things. This one is not yours.
Exactly.
And that's okay.
These teachers are gifted. These teachers are special.
Yeah.
They have incredible abilities to handle 20 kids in a room and teach them something. Let them do that. But let them do it safely. They're the ones taking the risk.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, I'm pretty upset about it. There's a board meeting tomorrow about it, and I'm gonna. You're
gonna log into that.
100%.
And express some opinions.
Listen.
I encourage you. It's your civic duty.
I sent it to my chat group, and I'm like, tell me what give me some bullet points, because this is responding the way that I want to respond on Facebook to this lady who has not only. I mean, she's launched a full campaign. She's got a change.org and everything.
Nice.
And she is planning on going to the board tomorrow to complain about the kids having to wear masks. And there were so many people in the comments that were like, if you don't want them to wear masks, then keep them home.
Right.
Right. I mean, it's
a very interesting argument that's
option.
been had. That they're like arguing, like, one, you have to educate my kid. Two, you have to educate them under the conditions that I understand.
I was going to say, you're going to have to educate them on my rules,
on my terms,
not how that works.
Yeah, and I saw one dad in one of the things. He's like, well, if you want my kids to wear masks, then you're going to have to start paying me child support. And it's like, no, that's not how this works.
Why?
And I guess his argument was, if you're going to tell me what to do with my kids, you got to pay me. Here's the thing. Schools have always been telling you what to do with their kids.
Telling you what to do with your kids.
Is the daycare you get between the hours of 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Like, that's technically half custody. Like, in some ways, they have our children more than we do during the school year.
100%.
Yeah, so 100%. You can't really ask for technically you owe them money.
You can't put your stick on the table and be like,
Yeah, you shouldn't.
No.
But people do. And it's interesting, the entitlement that people feel.
And it doesn't make sense. Do you want
it
to be
makes
able to
sense
go to your job and do your job and have them be taught? Because that's the society that we live
that's
in.
the societal promise we've all made.
Yes.
That they get some level of education and for this purpose.
And don't mistake us. We have fought and advocated for our children in multiple ways.
Yeah.
Especially for Ra. Mm-hmm. He's got special needs and he needs a higher level of advocacy than the other two need.
Yes.
But those are things that are discussions and negotiations.
Yeah, it's not a demand by any means.
No, they're not demands. I think a lot of times there is, just a misunderstanding or miscommunication, right? Mm-hmm. But I feel like with the mask mandate, this is like, you can't tell my kids to wear a mask. They can.
They absolutely can.
They absolutely can.
They can tell your kids to wear all sorts of things because there's
a dress code policy for every school.
Right.
And you've been adhering to that. There's a vaccination policy for every school.
Right.
Let's be clear about that too. Let's forget about the tank tops and the short skirts, right? And the arms and the hats and all that other kind of stuff. Let's forget about that.
Yeah.
There are rules to being vaccinated and being allowed to come into a public school without being vaccinated for certain things, right?
Yeah.
There are a list of vaccinations they have to have.
Yeah, and shout out to Ethel, my mother, aka Mom, for saying you can also go to school districts that don't make you wear masks. Like many school districts, multiple private schools do not have the mask mandates.
They do.
And so you can always shop around. I mean, it is your American right to shop around for an education system that can be provided to you.
They don't want to do that. They want their school district to do what they want them to do.
Because they're used to being somewhat entitled to.
Well, yeah.
See, someone just said mask optional. Mask is optional at the school. So not every school is adhering to the mask mandates.
I don't like mask optional.
Yeah.
I'm also very far to the end, right? Like, let's make everybody. You're at the
extreme. You're
get vaccinated. And
you're asking for fascism, ma'am.
Get out of my face. Get vaccinated and get out. I mean, that's.
I think. Get out of my face is a funny way of saying it because in many ways you're talking about the idea that we have a limited amount of control over what people can breathe on us, and in a situation like this where it does create a certain anxiety over what can be transmitted to you. I could see you being relatively, cautious.
I am incredibly cautious,
particularly when you have some comorbidities.
I am autoimmune, and my mom and your mom, like I could never forgive myself if any of them got sick.
Yeah.
You know,
you're living in fear, ma'am. That's what they would say.
Fear. I mean, fear is not of God. I get that. I understand that too. But there is something to be cautious. There is something to be said for being cautious and being careful
and being prepared
for
the circumstance that you're in.
The circumstances that absolutely 100%.
Yeah.
So I think
you can't ignore the circumstances.
You cannot. You can, and you should not.
And as I've said before, it's hard living in a real-time experiment. Like, there's a lot about this situation that has changed over time that has made it difficult to know what is the right thing to do. And so a lot of people are sort of managing a situation that is ever changing.
Yes.
And what's kind of sad about it is that after a year and a half, we've really reverted on a lot of what we understood to be things that were safety measures, in part because people just got sick of it. Like, how long could people sustain some of that? And they won't if they don't have to, unfortunately. So
listen, I'm sick.
We weren't supposed to talk about COVID this much.
We were not.
And now we're back on COVID again.
We are. We've just
spent another half an hour talking about COVID, and that was not supposed to be the topic of discussion, ma'am.
I'm sorry.
Way to derail.
I am sick of being at home. I don't want to homeschool my kids because y'all don't want to put your mask on when you go to school.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm all for compassion. I say let's approach this with a level of compassion for people.
I agree. I understand that there are people who have fears and issues with it, right? Mm-hmm. But rules and laws are what they are. I mean, we have these other vaccinations. We've got seat belts. We've got all kinds of sort of things that are in place for public safety, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, everybody doesn't 100% agree with them, but we got to follow them. Mm-hmm. If not for yourself, but for others, right?
Do we?
Yeah.
Do we?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Huh.
Because listen, in my chat group's like, if one of these unmasked kids coughs on one of my babies and they get COVID, I mean, it's just like the lady. I don't know if you've seen it. She's coughing all over the grocery store following these people.
Yeah, that was annoying.
That's what we doing. He's coughing. Listen, I don't want you to cough on me without the COVID, but I certainly don't want you to cough on me now with COVID being so prevalent and there's this Delta variant, right?
Yeah.
I don't like being breathed on.
I know.
General.
Just wear a mask. Everybody should get space helmets. I'm still lobbying for space helmets.
I mean, so here's the thing.
Space helmets.
I'm not even... listen, personally, I think everybody should be made to be vaccinated. That's my personal opinion.
Look at you.
That's my personal opinion.
Look at you take away people's rights.
Go ahead and do it. There are a whole bunch of rights.
Slope.
I'm a woman. There are a bunch of rights that I don't have according to my own body.
Oh, you're bringing your womanness into this.
Because I'm a woman.
Oh, wow.
Right? I'm a woman.
That's what we're doing.
Right? That's totally what we're doing.
Uh-huh. You're getting fiery.
I am getting fiery. Mm-hmm. There are things that we follow for the greater good.
The greater good. Now you're evoking the greater good.
The greater good.
The greater good.
100%. Mm-hmm. And I believe that getting vaccinated is one of those things, right?
Yeah. I mean, there are hosts of vaccinations we already have to take. It's just the problem is people are hesitant, and this is so exponentially contagious that unfortunately it could create a problem before you have time to solve the problem.
It's so exponentially
but it's also such an out of control thing that
death-provoking.
I understand why people are afraid and or hesitant. I get it.
I
just
get
hope
that
they
too.
have the time.
I still don't want you to breathe on me. Put your mask on.
I just hope that they have the time to figure it out before it's too late, unfortunately.
I do too. I'm not saying...
Because I don't wish ill on anyone.
I don't wish ill on anyone either.
Yeah.
I don't think that it's great.
But I can understand why all sides are upset and frustrated.
I get that. 100% I understand that. I'm just saying personally for me, I really just, I at the very minimum wear the mask, right? You don't want to do the vaccine.
Masks are not a big ask.
The mask is the middle point.
Yeah.
The mask is the middle point.
It's the least you could do.
You don't want to get vaccinated because you're not sure what's in it. You have other issues. That's fine. But don't breathe on other folks possibly having the COVID and then kill a bunch of folks unnecessarily. That's all I'm saying.
That's all you're saying? You said a lot for that to all be all you're saying.
I mean, I could say more.
Yeah, but we're out of time.
As correct as I can be.
It's time for a commercial.
And it's time for the halfway point. So
we're going to go ahead and take a commercial. Thank you so much for joining us for the first half hour of the Hallspace Podcast.
We appreciate it. See you soon.
So let me tell you about Anchor Podcast. It's the podcasting service that I use. Anchor.fm is the easiest way to make a podcast, and there are many different reasons why, but foremost is it's free. So you don't need to go out and buy a whole bunch of equipment. If you have a phone or a computer and a microphone, you can record and edit your podcast right on your phone or computer. So that's one major benefit, as well as the fact that they'll distribute your podcast to several different podcasting sites for you. Not only can your podcast be found on Anchor, it can also be found on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcast as well. So you don't have to worry about going to all those different sites and setting yourself up. They'll do it for you. You can also make some money on your podcast. Say you have a podcast that only 5 people listen to on a regular basis. They don't limit you on how many subscribers you have to have in order to be able to make a little bit of change for your podcast to keep yourself going. So pretty much everything you need to start a podcast can be found at Anchor.fm. So go download the app either in the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, or go to Anchor.fm to get started. And I guarantee you, it'll make things so much easier for you, like it has for me. Have you ever wondered why humans just aren't who we say we are? Psychologize You is a podcast by licensed psychologist Dr. Ritch Hall and licensed therapist Frank Baker. Join us as we explore why humans human the way we do. Hopefully, you'll learn a little bit about how the mind works, mental health issues, and ways to cope with this thing we call life. Weekly, wherever you get your podcasts.
Love, relationships, the church, the world as we see it today, and many more thought-provoking conversations. This season of Speak Kaya, She's Come Undone Talk Sessions. Coming to your ears soon. Keep watching.
Now, welcome back.
Hey there. Thanks for joining us for the second half.
Yes, and you are off camera
I
because you got up to go to the bathroom and ruined the shot.
I ruined it.
You're pointing the wrong way.
I am so sorry. Woo. Here we go.
You're not squared up anymore.
Nope.
Hold on.
There we go.
There we go.
We're good.
Yeah.
I'll figure it out.
The producer in my head is like, no, this is bad.
Chuck is dying a slow death back there. It's okay, Chuck.
It's not okay.
It'll be okay.
It's not okay. It should be better. The better or best should be the best.
It'll be better.
Okay, so in the second half, we're moving on. Nicole had a topic she wanted to discuss, and we have not been able to get to it, in part because of us talking about a bunch of other things. So
yeah, we started out talking about Michael K. Williams, which
in the first
turned
half,
into
yes, a whole conversation about COVID and other things.
COVID and all that other kind of stuff. And I think one of the other things that we were talking about this week was vulnerabilities.
Yes, that was a big conversation between you and I.
It was. And there are different, so there aren't different kinds of vulnerabilities, but there are different kinds of relationships, right? Mm-hmm. And so, you and I have a relationship. We're married. We have a romantic relationship. I have a relationship with my mom. You have one with yours. We have one with each of the children.
Yes.
All of those different relationships require a kind of vulnerability. And I think what we were talking about and what you had brought up was that, and what you see in your field of work is that being vulnerable is incredibly hard for people.
Being vulnerable is incredibly hard for people.
Yeah.
Well, so what I had noticed when I was talking about my field was I work with a lot of 20-somethings because I work for a college. And, a lot of them want to like play around whenever they get a breakup. They're
young, they're experimenting.
Whenever they have a breakup or whatever, they want to like play around with like a friends with benefit situation. I see this a lot in young women who are like, well, I would just like to have consequence-free sex. And
there's no such thing.
There's no such thing, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But society tells them, no, you can mess around with someone and there wouldn't be too many problems that would come from that.
And then if you're in Texas, they prevent you from getting an abortion. But that's
I wasn't going to go there.
I know,
but you had to drop that in there. It is part of the zeitgeist this week.
I'm sorry.
It was interesting to me that when I said, well, why don't you ask this person how they feel about you? They were like, no, I can't do that.
That's never where they go with the thought process.
No, but the idea that you could just
20s.
jump to doing stuff with this person without ever having an adult
conversation at
with
all.
them. Yes.
Yeah.
About those feelings.
Yeah.
That people are often more comfortable jumping into physical relationships.
Yep.
And not considering that to be a type of vulnerability was like fascinating to me, because no matter what, like you are making yourself physically the most vulnerable you could ever be.
Yes.
But the idea that somehow supersedes
it doesn't
the
resonate
idea
the same way with them.
of emotional vulnerability,
right.
Like letting a person emotionally into your space, and that they feel as if they could silo off their emotional vulnerability by engaging in this physical vulnerability without there being consequence. And it's like, no, there's going to be a consequence.
There's no way around it. And again,
so for some people, I would say yes. I would say it's extremely difficult for women, particularly women who have not trained themselves to be that way. So it's like, if you're a serial monogamist.
No, I mean, there's definitely a learned behavior associated
some people
with that.
can learn it. But I mean, even then, I think there ends up being consequences for it.
No, because you are, when you're engaging with someone physically, you are giving some part of yourself, some part of your soul to that person.
Yes.
Whether you know it or not, whether you acknowledge it or not, whether you care
There's an
or
exchange
not,
that's
there
happening.
is an exchange.
No matter what.
And it is one of the deeper exchanges that you can have with a person. So it is incredibly important.
Which is why, most religions, or a lot of religions, particularly Western religions, consider
they're like, wait till you get married.
Sex to be sacred. In part. And we're not really just talking about sex here.
No, we're talking about.
But it was unusual to me to look through the lens of, sex isn't sacred, but telling someone how you actually feel is.
Yeah.
Or at least being open to, they might not like you back. So and the idea that people, particularly guys might not reject you physically, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be open to you emotionally. You know what I mean?
I feel like, and this is just my personal opinion, I feel like, especially if we're talking about 20-somethings, the guys will you try to find a nice way to say it. Yeah. They will screw warm...
Say it the way you... Yeah.
They will screw warm hole.
Okay.
They don't even need to see your face, show, honey. I'm sorry.
The kids are listening. They're not.
First giving honor to God, who's the head of my life.
Yeah. But the idea that guys will dive right into a physical relationship.
You guys, as far as the physical relationships go, have less of a barrier, right? Have less of this stumbling block, right?
I mean, and guys get messed up emotionally too. They're just
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying
acknowledging the consequences.
They don't have those same thought processes, right? So
whereas women will feel those consequences almost immediately.
These young men, they're like, I am absolutely willing to jump into this physical thing, not think twice about it,
right?
And not to say that 20-year-old women aren't also kind of in it. I mean,
particularly
I'm putting ages on it, but it's
the interesting
really,
thing to me.
It's a mindset.
Contemporary women definitely. Like, so because they've been fed this different story, whereas historically it was maintain your chastity and your purity. Now it's, you should be able to have the same fun that guys have. And by virtue of that messaging, they are now feeling as if they do have some entitlement to consequence-free sex. And I'm not saying don't ever, but I am saying acknowledge that it is hard to escape those consequences, and that being physically vulnerable with someone is akin. They are not that separate than being emotionally vulnerable, because you are leaving yourself exposed to another person by engaging in physical activity with them.
You are connecting to that person in a way.
No matter what you do.
no matter how you slice it.
And then they're often sort of feeling unfulfilled in these emotional relationships.
Well, yeah,
it's
because you're not connected to that person in any other way.
You know, the fashion
right?
that relationship is can be built upon. Like, you should be able to have sex for fun. I'm not saying don't. But I am also saying that vulnerability is vulnerability, and across the board, you have to acknowledge that vulnerability. And so I also feel like if you're not adult enough to have a serious conversation about a variety of issues, and I'm
then
also...
you probably shouldn't be rubbing your parts together.
But I'm also going to give the caveat that most adults who do the stuff with each other don't have adult conversations, which I feel is frustrating. More so because I deal with 20-year-olds all the time.
Well, because what happens is they go and they do the stuff and the stuff and the stuff, and then they come to you and they're like, I don't understand why I'm so messed up.
Right. Shout out to the young woman who was buying a pregnancy test in the dollar store when I was in there buying spices. Right. So it's like, I have a host of questions for that young lady. As to why you ended up in this circumstance that you are in the dollar store buying a pregnancy test with your friend. Not
to say, I mean, we were married, but not to say that we haven't had many CVS.
We've had some pregnancy scares.
CVS
straight up pregnancies.
I really don't want a fourth baby, y'all. This is not.
Yeah.
So I get that fear to a certain extent. I couldn't imagine being way younger and unattached.
Right.
Having to go to a CVS.
Right. But what's interesting is how, you're fed all this, people are fed all this messaging around, engaging in this behavior. And then they're like, well, how would I know these consequences were going to show up? And it's like, well, that's what the act is for. Yeah. Like the fun stuff is just a thing that you get to do with the act.
That's just the icing on the cake.
Procreation.
Right.
And that if you are not adult enough to just have a conversation wherein you say, I feel this about you. What do you feel about me? Can we work from here?
Yeah.
Then maybe don't do the thing with a person you don't feel up enough to have. You don't feel you trust enough. You don't feel you can open up to enough to tell them how you really feel. And that was my stance on it.
I 100% agree with that. If you don't feel ready enough to talk about all the deep stuff, then engaging in like this physical activity is a whole nother thing. But I also think I wanted to bring up that there is a generational element to this, right?
Yeah.
So like my parents were 20 when they got together, and it was like, oh, we together, we having a baby, we having 2 babies.
Yeah.
They were married and we're together. That's what we're doing. If you got a girl pregnant and y'all were together, then that's what you were gonna do.
Right.
And a lot of different other countries, you get to a certain age and it's like, our family and their family, we're going to get together.
Yeah.
And you guys are going to get married because this is what's best for the collective.
Yes. We talked about that on our walk today about how certain other cultures, and I've said this on the podcast before, that if you're thinking about getting married, you need to be thinking not just about yourself and what you could be for the other person,
that you're attaching yourself
what's
to.
the larger thing? Because if you don't have the larger thing, you can often get very frustrated in this situation that will not always be here to meet your needs.
And if you don't value the larger thing, right? I think what works for us is that we understand that, we love each other and you're cute and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But there is...
I'm into you, but there's a much larger picture here.
There's a bigger picture here. There's your family, there's my family, there's all our families pushed together. Right?
Our children learn from the values of our larger family.
A number of things for them.
Yeah.
Right? We take care of our village the best way that we know how.
Yeah.
And that's important to both of us.
Right.
If that's not important to the person that you're with, then it's going to be a thing.
Yeah.
It's going to be a thing.
And once again, I think there's a lot of cultural messaging around individuality and pleasing yourself. You know what I mean? Like being what's going to make me happy? What's going to make me happy? And I think people get kind of lost in the sauce of that. Like, no, this isn't serving me right now. When we fail to recognize that sometimes relationships are definitely an ebb and flow. There are times where you're on top. There's times where the other person's on top.
Listen, it's not your turn.
Yeah.
It's not your turn.
Right.
Stuff has to get done.
Yeah.
There is a village for you to consider. There's yourself that you should also consider, but there's your spouse, there's your children, there's the people around you. All of that stuff matters, right? Right. So it's a constant juggling act to figure out how to make sure everything stays where it needs to, and that everything is getting the right kind of attention. It's like kind of like having plants, right? There's some plants that need to be watered every day. There's some plants that only need once a week.
You'll kill them if you water them every day.
Exactly. So there's this sort of ebb and flow.
I think it's key to sort of understand. A lot of people go into it not understanding themselves, not understanding their partner.
Yep.
And if you don't understand those needs, it's going to be very easy for your partner not to meet them.
Well, and I think too, I mean, again, it's about the work, right?
Yes, that it is
because
work.
we didn't know that when we started dating.
Yeah.
I mean, we met when we were 20, but we didn't get married till we were 30. There's a lot of that ebb and flow that we had to figure out in that time frame. But we made it work.
Right.
We figured it out. We saw that there was value in doing that, right? Because that's another element of it, right? If you're with somebody, you're like, I just like doing stuff with his stuff. And it's like, I don't really want to have his babies or be with him. Then that's going to make all of this harder.
Once again, the idea of just having fun with someone.
Yeah.
When the rubber hits the road, like this is a real thing now.
Yeah.
It's much harder to maintain.
Yep.
Because what a lot of people don't think, and I've in this podcast before mentioned people like Kevin Samuels and other people that I watch out of pure curiosity, like, oh, is this what the people are doing?
Because you don't want to know what they're saying.
Yeah, because you keep hearing about it, and you're like, what's going on over there?
Yeah.
I've often found myself frustrated because it's people talking to 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds about what their ideas of. It's I guess my point here is that it's hard to explain to people who've never been in a either long-term or marriage relationship what it really means.
Yeah.
And I'll say this just on a personal level. Like I will say, when I was a younger man, I judged my parents' relationship harshly because from the outside, I thought I had a better idea of what relationships could be. But now that I've been in a relationship for, 13 years? I'm like, oh man, I should keep my opinions to myself. It's
you
the
don't know nothing about that relationship.
So it's the age-old adage of like, parents of imaginary children are always the best parents.
Oh, they're the better parents. It's like, my kid would never be under the table flipping out.
Right. But it's
how
easy
many
to say.
times did our children flip out under the table?
Right.
No, it's
right. How many times are we threatening to leave this Olive Garden because somebody don't know how to sit in a chair?
It's $5 Friday Monday at La Rosa's. Come on, y'all.
We just want to eat some spaghetti and go home.
Get the crayons and color and shut up.
Right. But it was so much easier to walk into an Applebee's at 10 o'clock and judge that parent who has a kid sitting at the table like, I would never have my baby out at 10 p.m.
You're better parents before you've actually had kids.
And then when you actually have them, you're just holding on for dear life.
You are in that same surviving way,
when it comes to relationships, I think when
it comes to marriages,
and long-term relationships,
100%.
People often think, "No, I want that life," and then it's like, "Oh no, but what's that life really like?" And
you don't
nobody
know.
thinks about the day-to-day work that is folding up your ego and walking into the house to make sure that the ship still runs, like the machine is still running.
There are so many aspects of it that, and every relationship is different, right? So ours looks different from a lot of people's, and a lot, there's no. Everyone's situation is unique, right? Yeah. And so, but there's one thing that I think that we could all agree on is that it's work.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's work to keep it going, to keep it fresh, to keep it happy, all that kind of stuff. I mean, but like if we're talking about day to day, if you recorded our house for 2 days, you would see a lot of laundry, a lot of screaming kids, a lot of cooking, a lot of dishes, a lot of just stuff. It's not like these Disney movies.
I have to wonder who are those people whose houses are always clean and they have children. Like, how do you do that? Do you hire help?
I think
who's the help you hire? Because my kids are actively working against me.
They actively work against you.
My kids don't care about
destroy the whole house with a granola bar. That's their goal.
Right.
But I think that I have seen this in some of my mom groups. There are moms who are so OCD that they just spend all night cleaning. Yeah,
I've seen that.
So, and for some of those extreme situations,
so they reset the house every day.
I'm not her. Yeah. I will go to bed if I need to go to bed.
Yeah, but I think you should.
But there are a lot of moms or a lot of dads that are just. They're burning the midnight oil and they are trying to keep this ship afloat. And all of it's hard.
It is.
All of it is hard. All of it's rewarding and fun, right? But there's still, if you're on the outside looking in, it is not for the faint of heart.
Yeah.
It's not for the faint of heart. So there is, again, in order to be able to get that ebb and flow working, there is this level of vulnerability, right?
Right.
So for us to work, I have to be able to say to you, and you have to be able to say to me, I need help.
Yeah.
You know, like, I know that this
a lot of marriages mess up because they can't
say that.
They can't with the other person just admit, not just needing help, but like opening up about where they are and what they're actually experiencing. There's a lot of relationships that could fall apart.
And it's scary.
Just because you're unable to share openly with your partner.
Yes. Well, and I wanted to bring this up as well. There is a part of you that maybe if you've reconciled it yourself in your head, but you haven't brought it to your spouse or to your partner, right? There's a level of fear there, right? Like, okay, man, I'm really struggling with this anxiety or whatever it is, right? But then there's also, for a lot of folks, the inability to say it out loud at all to anybody, even yourself. So I may not be able to say it to you because I can't even say it to myself. Right. And so there is an additional layer there, which is where the therapy helps, which is where the additional help helps.
Ideally,
right?
if you can humble yourself enough to seek out that support.
Well, and I wouldn't call it humble. I would call it, I don't know what I would call it. There is a certain point that you have to hit to say, I need help.
Yeah.
Even to yourself. Right? And so once you're able to do that, then it's like, okay, I'm going to seek this help now, right?
Yeah.
I'm seeking this help. I need to find the right person to help me.
I'm actively seeking this help.
Actively seeking. Yeah, there are these so many different levels to that.
Yeah.
And I mean, and I'll, put this out there. Not everybody does it. Not everybody feels comfortable enough to do that journey with their spouse. But I guarantee you 100% of the time, the spouse wants to do that journey with you to help you through it.
Of the time, unfortunately.
No, you don't want to. You don't want to.
I mean, I'm saying
I'm about to lay some stuff out for you.
I'm saying I do, but I can't speak for every other spouse.
Well, no,
because some spouses don't have the ability to carry your water for a variety of reasons. A lot of them, yes, the healthy ones.
And therein lies a problem, though, right?
Yes.
There's this.
On this, we agree.
There is.
I just avoid blanket statements.
Okay. No, I get that there are things that you're not equipped to help your spouse through, but you got to at least hear that out, right? That's your job. It's your job.
It should be.
It's your job.
Not every relationship is built that way, but yes, I hear what you're saying.
Well, I mean, then what do you have? What do you have?
Good question.
Some
relationships are broken.
Yes, and I'm not saying that there aren't broken relationships. What I'm saying to you is, if you don't have the it's one thing to be afraid to say something out loud and then to be able to say it aloud to your spouse, right? It's another thing that you say it to them and they're not even at the very minimum supportive or encouraging.
That happens a lot.
I understand it happens, but then what do you have?
But it does. Then, I mean,
it pushes you down into the dark hole even further.
It can. It would tank
you. If I'm a depressed or anxious person, I finally decided I need to get help, or I'm on heroin, whatever it is, right?
Wow, heroin? Jeez.
I'm going straight to the, I've been watching the wire.
Straight to the hard stuff.
I'm straight to the hard stuff.
Can we
I mean, we're in Ohio, so it'd be meth, but whatever, right?
It could be heroin. There's a heroin problem in Ohio.
But I mean, whatever it is, if I come to you and you're like, ugh.
Some relationships have that problem where the person just backs out. Like, I don't know what to do with this. You're on your own. Now, you shouldn't, because it's supposed to be a shared responsibility between two people who've joined themselves together for the purposes of carrying the burdens of life together.
Let me stop you there.
But dysfunction is dysfunction.
Dysfunction is dysfunction. But let me also say to you that even though you're in a relationship, and this is, again, my personal opinion, when you're in a relationship, you're still your own person.
Yeah.
And one of the things that you posted that really resonated with me was, you still have to save you, right? Yeah. So it's kind of like the Will and Jada sort of epiphany, where it's like, I can't make you happy.
I don't make you happy.
You have to make you happy, right?
Yeah.
You have to make you healthy. You have to make you able to work through whatever issues you're working through. That doesn't mean I'm not there to support you.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. What it does mean is that the responsibility lies on you.
Yes.
Right. And so that I feel like that's something that's incredibly important for me to hear, because there are certain things that I need to work on just for me, not for you, not for anybody else.
On this we agree.
I can't lay this on you. Right.
Yeah.
I do need help with it. Right. So
I can support, but I can't do the job.
And so there are a lot of relationships where it's like, I don't even know what to do for them. Just support them. Hear them out.
What does that even mean? I don't know how to support.
Well, I mean, and then that's what you talk about. One of the things you've always asked me is like, what do you need from me?
Yeah.
Well, I need you to get these kids out of my face. Yeah. Just for a day. Like,
I'll do it.
Right. I mean, and that's a simplified sort of exaggeration. But yeah, I mean, there are things that as a couple you discuss, you work through. Support is one of those things.
Yeah.
Carrying the burden is a wholly different thing.
Yeah.
You know, that's not your job.
That's why more people kind of need, if not premarital counseling. Like, once again, people often assume that these identities or roles are just given to us and that we will understand them. And that's one of the benefits of like organized religion. No, you
jump into it and you're like...
For those of us who were raised in organized religion, at the very least, organized religion has discussions about the expectations. So it's not just this magical idea that, you will just be this thing because you want to be this thing. Like, there are rules laid out. Like, this is what is expected of a husband. This is what is expected of a wife.
This is how this works.
This is how this is supposed to work within this cultural group. And so that's one of the reasons that I think we can't, people are often anti-religion, and I think you can't jettison whole cloth some of these cultural hallmarks, because they are how we created these things because we needed a way to spread certain schemas. Without them, we would not know we'd be lost. We would be rudderless. And so we kind of need religion in that way, or we have always needed religion in that way. And that, without the dogma, we don't know what to do. So
I know, and that's your like agnostic sort of spiel on it. We need God.
What?
We need.
Okay, is that an agnostic? That wasn't agnostic? I was genuinely saying religion is good. In many ways, because it allows us to spread cultural ideas.
Yeah, but I believe that God can lead you and guide your path, right? And that when he's leading and guiding your path, can do that for your relationship, for your kids, relationship with your kid, all your different sort of relationships. Yeah. But your first relationship with him is kind of, the most important. So
yeah, my caveat is that not everybody believes in a God.
No, I completely understand as well, but we don't here.
Yeah. So
as for our house,
when you talk
for
about
me
what
and
people
mine,
need, it's always hard to fall on one side of the fence, because different people feel like they need other things, and who am I to say that they don't need that thing?
I don't begrudge that. What I'm saying is, for us, this is what is important to us, right? And this is what works for us, and this is what we believe, right? Yeah. So that's just my spiel on it. That's not to say anything against whatever anybody else believes, but this is wholeheartedly where we stand on that. Yeah, I just want to make sure that we kind of say that. But
and I'm not genuinely agnostic. I'm just questioning Christian is what I say. I have a lot of questions that are pretty high level. And so
your dad is shuddering in North Carolina right now.
Maybe. He knows me.
Yeah. His dad's a pastor, y'all. So.
Yeah, I'm a PK. That's part of the reason I have the questions. I know too much.
I'm not saying you shouldn't have questions. I'm not saying that at all.
Yeah, I wasn't defending the notion.
To more knowledge, right? I'm just saying, as far as I stand, this is where I am. Yeah. But so there this vulnerability, and one of the other things we wanted to touch on before we stop is that there's the vulnerability within your romantic relationships, right?
That is important and valuable, and the relationship won't stand without it.
100%, right? But then there's also this level of there's vulnerability in all your different relationships, but in
most
other
relationships expose you to
emotional relationships should expose you to a level of vulnerability, and that's vulnerability.
Why you need connection, so that someone can watch your back. Ideally,
absolutely. And who are you connected to a lot of the time? Your kids, right? There is a level of vulnerability with them, right? And so for us, I know we're raised old school. We got this new school. So we kind of toe the line between old school ideology and new school ideology.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot.
We talk about it a lot, but there is the idea that I need to be able to be vulnerable with them to allow them to also be vulnerable with me.
Yeah, no, I always say that you teach kids how to be emotional creatures.
You do.
And so if you are incapable of expressing your emotions,
They're
they
not
will
going to be
learn
able
that
to.
This is how you handle emotions.
Yep.
And so you do need to learn how to open up of yourself.
Yep. And so there are a lot of times, because kids test you all the time, right?
That's their whole thing.
There are so many times where they'll ask you about something, you're like, ooh, I need to find an appropriate answer for this. My childhood was a little more complicated than most, and so I get asked about it a lot, or it comes up often enough, and I'm pretty candid with them, just because I've always been kind of candid. It's like I don't know how else to be.
Yeah.
I don't, I try to find the most age appropriate ways to speak on it, but the truth is the truth, right?
Yep.
And this is my truth. And my truth as my childhood is different than yours, and I will compare and contrast for them so that they get the idea that the way that they're growing up is different, and we are working very hard to maintain that, right?
Avoid the mistakes.
To avoid the mistakes, and that's not
The
that
issues,
I don't make new mistakes. I make a whole kind
absolutely.
of different mistakes
It's
my
impossible not
mom
to.
and dad didn't make. 100%, right? But there is a level of vulnerability there to say, okay, I got that wrong. I'm sorry. Or this is how I was raised, and so I kind of just flowed on to you for me raising you. All of that is sort of a conversation that you have with your kids. So there is this vulnerability to your little people to say, okay, yeah, my bad, dog, right? Or hey,
ideally, you got to be able to open up. You got to be able to apologize to your kids when you make mistakes.
You do.
There's a lot of different sort of steps you need to be thoughtful about when you're interacting with children. And children will almost always trigger the things within you that you tried to hide.
Yep.
Because they don't know. They're just literally spreading out everywhere.
Right. And then they hit something, you're like, oh,
always hit a soft
man.
spot. And you'll have to face something that you've been trying to bury.
Yeah.
And I always tell new parents, be ready for that. Like whatever the thing, you might not even know what it is until they tripwire it. Now you've got an explosive emotional moment internally.
And sometimes you have to say, I need to come back to you on that one.
Right.
Because you need to gather your thoughts in order to.
And don't be afraid to do that.
Explain.
Like, give them
that's
the
okay.
space.
But you don't. So Ra, he has a great memory. So he's like, you said you were going to tell me about this.
Yeah.
And he wants to know. He's like, he doesn't want to wait till later. Because sometimes I'm like, I don't know if this is age appropriate information for you.
Yeah.
But I do know this is how, this is what happened.
Yeah.
And so he's like, I don't want to wait. I want you to tell me. He's very worldly in that way. He's very information dense. Like he wants
to know things.
He does. And he absorbs all of it. He absorbs way more than we know, essentially. But
that he's willing to share outwardly.
Yeah. So again, like I said, I try to make it age appropriate and stuff, but he wants to know.
Yeah.
Other two may not care as much, but you got to be ready for those kind of questions and situations, and you never know what it's going to be,
and you will have to explain it.
Yep.
And it will rip open a part of you that you were trying to keep closed, more than likely.
So if you don't deal with it,
that's why I do tell a lot of parents, like, hey, if you, a lot of times when I'm sitting with parents in therapy situations, I'm telling them, like, you might want to get your own therapist, because more than likely your kid is triggering things inside you that you don't know how to deal with. That's why you've come to me as a therapist.
That you didn't even realize was a thing. Yeah, there's so many things, I've been to therapy a couple times. There's so many things, like, you say it out loud and you're like, and you see the reaction of the psychologist or psychiatrist or whatever, and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
Is that a thing for you? That I guess that is a thing. I guess it's trauma.
Yeah, there was a meme a few days ago. It was like, how would we have been had we not been raised with so much unprocessed trauma?
Yeah.
As Black people, very often we're just sort of told to be resilient and buck up and get through the day.
And we are.
And we're very good at it. But what it means is there's often a lot going on in our internal world that we aren't focusing on or dealing with in a way that helps us to be healthy with how
100%.
to address some of this stuff.
Yep.
And so I do think we need to do more as a culture. And I say that as a guy who, is actively trying to, I'm open for clients. I want black men to come talk to me, but I know it's hard for you black men.
It is.
But I do think it's a time in the world where therapists are the most accessible than we've ever been because of teletherapy, because of these mediums.
Right.
And so by virtue of that.
But you guys are still booked and busy.
A lot of us are. A lot of us are. I'm not 100% booked and busy, but a lot of therapists out there are. And so you have to really I think it's a good opportunity now to really embrace the need because it's there.
Yep. Yep.
And so in that regard, the idea of if you feel like you can't be vulnerable to your loved ones, be it your family or your significant other, then maybe you go talk to a person like a therapist
to learn how to
help
do
you
that.
learn how to be vulnerable. And be vulnerable in that space so that you can learn how to be vulnerable because, as I said before.
Because that's the one safe place, right?
Ideally. Because, as black people, we've often had to be resilient. We've often had to be strong. And one of the side effects of that is not knowing how to open up when we need to. And that creates a lot of problems and stress and heart problems. So, take care of that so you can live a long and healthy life and see your kids grow up and
grandkids
not be weighed down by the problems that you faced. Or these past traumas that you're not even thinking about, but they're weighing you down without you really thinking about it. Yeah. And so on that note, we've reached the end of another episode. Hooray.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for joining us.
These lives are fun.
Yeah, it's a whole different thing. It's like hard for me to keep my brain on for the whole time and be producing, but I have a good time pulling them off. So glad to do this with you. Thanks, everyone, for sticking with us for this third live broadcast of the Hallspace Podcast.
We truly appreciate it.
We do. We really do. And so with that, you know what the music means.
You know what the music means.
Our time is up.
I say good day, sir.
I say good day. The Hallspace Podcast is brought to you by Hall Productions, LLC. Show notes and credits can be found at our webpage, thehallspacepodcast.wordpress.com. Any questions, comments, or concerns can be sent to us at thehallspacepodcast@gmail.com. The show is written by Daggerpin Davis. Music is curated by DJ Cabal. The show is produced by Chuck Jones and recorded at Slash and Trash Studios. If you like what you hear and you want to hear more, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And I hope you all have a good week. House Hall. We rise brilliantly.